All right, welcome back to another episode of Digging Deeper. You'll see some new, hopefully kind of familiar, but potentially new faces. If you're watching, if you're listening, you're going to hear some new, beautiful voices on the podcast of Digging Deeper today. Real quick, before introductions, Digging Deeper is a podcast that Rise City does every week to look at the previous sermon from the Sunday previous to the week that we're filming this, as well as things like what we're doing today, which is a little bit deeper of a dive into our elements that make up Rise City Church. And today is a fun one because we're actually looking into the production of worship. Maybe that should be the title, Producing Worship.
Producing worship.
In the healthiest way possible. Yes, yeah. But today we've got an old friend on the podcast, Jean. I'm sure if you've listened to Rise City, Digging Deeper, if you've been to Rise City, you know Jean. Jean actually was the mastermind behind a lot of this current setup.
And then good to be back.
Yeah, feels great to have you.
I love having you back.
Yeah. And Jean is actually now current congregant of Rise City. So really, really thankful to have you here. And then we've got Lee and Nathaniel, both people who are serving as tech director on the weekends at Rise City as part of our services.
Yeah, this is definitely a different vibe. I like to be behind the scenes.
Yeah. And now you're in front of a camera.
Exactly.
Yeah.
With we might look a little different because we're usually hiding in the dark shadows in the back.
Yeah. No, you got the big lights.
How does this thing
usually
work?
I turn the lights
Side
down.
to be speaking to?
Nathaniel was joking. He's like, am I speaking into the right side of this microphone? Like, you should know. You
exactly.
run our services on Sunday morning. But I'd love to, just as part of our introductions today, maybe give you each just like 1 minute to share maybe what your current role at Rise City or, former role at Rise City, currently what you're doing maybe as part of your job, just a little bit of your experience.
I'll start.
Yeah.
My current role at Rise City Church is just loving to show up on Sunday mornings and be a part of the church. What I've done in the past is I was part of the kind of production team, kind of helping allow Sunday morning to happen. So figuring out all the little details that need to happen in order to make one service feel cohesive of a whole bunch of different parts, which was kind of overseeing volunteer teams, buying cameras that need to be bought, lenses that need to be bought, repairing equipment that needs to be repaired, et cetera, as well as helping Ben out on the worship team. Those are good days.
Yeah. Now, what are you currently doing for your job?
I currently am a producer at a production company called Turning Point, which is the kind of outreach ministry of David Jeremiah. And so I personally oversee like anything that's like a video that's 10 minutes or less. Is kind of my world. So that's going to be like sermon bumpers that we would be equivalent to, or if he has a new book out, producing the commercial for that book. Anything from filming it, editing it, putting it on TV, putting it online, etc.
It's awesome. So production and creative, just in a different ministry setting.
Yeah,
it's awesome. All right, Lee, let's hear it.
Well, I'm most famous because I'm the husband of Mariah Sherman.
Oh, yeah.
Wonderful next-gen pastor.
You're most famous because you're the loudest laugher in the auditorium.
Generally, if, there's even a remotely funny joke set on stage, I'll be the one that's
You will know exactly where Lee is sitting.
Exactly.
It's the best.
But also, I help on production. I help do the sound and kind of run producer when I'm doing it for the weekend. We also have wonderful Nathaniel that helps out. But also, I help out at other churches as needed when their production directors are gone for either the weekend or they're switching, different jobs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I help out.
All different kinds of churches, sizes of churches, too, which is really cool. We'll dive into more of that later. But yeah, Nathaniel.
Yeah, Nathaniel Pitcher. So along with Lee, we kind of share responsibilities for the producer role as well as the audio engineer. And so that kind of looks like us sort of leading the team in the back of the house, lighting and the graphics and the lyrics, video switching for our people online, as well as running the actual audio board and adjusting the sound to hopefully please everyone, which is a difficult task.
Yes.
If anyone's tried to please everyone in any area, you probably understand that it's probably impossible. So it's a good challenge to have though. And it's a great way also to be involved in the worship and the music without having to be up on the stage. I think people might be surprised at how much the person behind that console really could influence the sound of what comes out of the speakers and what is heard during the message as well as the worship. Similarly to like you might have heard covers of songs that are popular, you know, and it was produced as a pop or a rock song, and then you hear somebody do it like in rapping style, or you hear them do it in an acoustic like cover for a coffee shop or something. You can make some dramatic changes if you wanted to really direct the sound of what's coming out. And so it's a big responsibility, and one that, you know, I think is important for our members here at the church to be able to feel like they're connecting with worship, to be able to worship our God, and also to receive the message and to understand what is being said. You know, a lot of people, young and old, have hearing issues, and that's kind of how we do here.
Totally. One more thing about Nathaniel, I'll share it because I've got a question that builds off of the idea you were actually just talking about. Nathaniel's day job, 9 to 5, is theater director and technological director at San Diego City College.
With the community college district, yeah.
Community
I've been
college
at City
district,
College as well as one of our other colleges.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do have the privilege to work in this industry as my full-time job, and I've done that in various ways throughout the years, both installing things in studios as well as traveling on tour, and currently I'm lucky to be able to do that locally, which was a big change for me. I used to travel 6 months out of the year plus, and
Running sound for Snoop Dogg, was it? No, Ice Cube?
no.
Wow.
D-O-double-G?
Not directly for, but I have been a part of a lot of different artists and a lot of different
He's rubbed shoulders with
genres,
some pretty cool people.
and
That's why the
experienced
bass
some
is
cool
so high.
things. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's just start out basic. And actually, real quick, we're 7 minutes in. I should explain the purpose of why this group is together today. If you listen to last week's message, Pastor Bobby talked a lot about expressions of worship, and we're getting to a couple more messages here in a couple weeks where we'll be broadening the definition of worship, talking about living a lifestyle of worship. What does that really mean? But we're still in this mode of actually talking about singing and congregational worship, and how do we worship not just by singing, but even some of those expressions that Pastor Bobby talked about in the middle of bowing down, kneeling, lifting up our hands, singing with a loud shout. Those are all things that happen in a congregational setting. But all of those things can actually be traced back to a very foundational level of production in a service to create an atmosphere for those kinds of things to happen. So I'm just going to start out basic and just throw out the question. Any one of you could take a stab at it first. But for those who don't know, that are listening to this podcast, who might be watching, paint a picture of Sunday morning. Paint a picture of like how many people are involved as part of producing a service. What do they do, and what goes into a Sunday morning service?
Nathaniel, you want to conquer them?
Sure. I mean, I think the term that's kind of come up in the industry is FILO, right? First in, last out. And that's definitely true here at the church, but also, you know, within the industry as a whole, in production and entertainment. The first people here in the morning, you know, before any of the janitors even sometimes, you know, in a place, is the sound and the production team and the lighting team, the video team, whoever is here. And we show up here a little after 6 usually, depending on how well we slept the night before, perhaps, how well our alarm worked, how much coffee we have. And
Actually, the only people that would know that is in this group. I know when Nathaniel's had a longer weekend. You guys know when I've had a longer weekend. We always get here before 7. That's our rehearsal time. We always do. But
I think Bobby mentioned a few messages ago, it's amazing how fast you can clean your house when someone's on their way and will be there in 5 minutes.
yeah,
We like to have some time to prepare in the morning, but it's amazing how much we can get done in 5 minutes if we have to.
Mm-hmm.
But it does entail, getting here early, turning everything on. You never know what to expect in the morning. We would like to think it'd be as easy as walking in and turning on the light switch and everything's ready to go. But sometimes you turn on the light switch and the light explodes.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that's part of the reason why we do need to be here early to prepare, so that we can prepare the space, for everyone else. First for the worship team, we have a rehearsal in the morning as well. And then also for our entire congregation.
yeah. So you talked about the space. Maybe, especially Jean and Lee, alongside with our former worship pastor, Kyle, you guys planned out a lot of the space and implemented a lot of the systems, a lot of the different technological resourcing that we have to experience what we experience on a Sunday morning. What are some of those things that are implemented that people know are there, but maybe don't really know the whole scope of what's there?
Lee
Yeah,
Sherman.
luckily, I have been around since we moved into this building and we kind of re-renovated a lot of it. The best thing that we have is the acoustic panels. If we did not have those acoustic panels, you literally talk and you can hear yourself 8 times in that room. It's crazy. So the acoustic panels help with our sound system, because obviously we're amplifying what you guys are doing on stage, and so we're making it a lot louder. But the way that we're going to control that to make it a joyful noise versus a obnoxious noise is those acoustic panels that you see around the room. They're kind of gray, several feet tall, and stuff like that. So those really help absorb that sound and really stop that sound. Obviously, we have projectors that kind of bring, all the words on the screen. Also, it helps project like Bobby now and stuff like that. When we have them on the screen, stuff like that. We have cameras. I'll let Jean kind of really talk about the cameras, the LED wall, since he was the one that kind of helped, integrate those things.
Yeah. I think before all of that, the reason why all this stuff exists is to create a least distracting environment for people to be able to worship. The idea is that we want people to be able to experience the presence of God in this room. And there are things that help and there are things that hurt. Our lights fade, right? Like the auditorium lights. And we wish that they could fade better, but they do fade, and that's because if you went from full brightness to full dark, that would be jarring and it would take you out of the moment. But a transition helps keep you there. In the same way, lighting on the pastor and on the band helps you see the band. And so there's a point there, and you don't want it to be super obnoxious. But also, if there were no lights, you wouldn't see the band, and that would take you out of worship. We have lyrics on the screens because if you don't know the words, it helps you worship. If you don't know the words, it takes you out of worship.
We know when
Yes.
ProPresenter, the
Right.
program that we use to
Right.
display lyrics, crashes.
The reason why,
People look
the reason
with-
why we have the pastor magnified on the screen is not because he wants to be well known. It's because there are people in the back of the room who can't see that close, and they want to be able to see his facial reactions when he's talking. The same reason that we actually added a row of speakers halfway through the room was because the speakers were needing to be so loud in the front. The people in the front were complaining, but the people in the back didn't feel like worship was loud enough for them. So that was a way to help minimize distraction. All these things, the point is that you don't think about them.
Yep.
If you never look back at the sound booth during worship,
That's a
they did their
perfect
job
segue.
well.
Yeah.
If you never notice them, they did their job well. So with that, like cameras and stuff, the whole point is that people at home, if they're sick, if they're traveling, or if they're, especially in today's digital age, the front door of most churches these days is their live stream. People are going to look at a live stream before they ever even walk into the door.
Exactly.
So it's like, are these cameras up to quality to give an accurate representation of what it's like to attend on Sunday? Or are they filming through a potato and you can't see anything and it's super blurry and it doesn't sound good? So all these things, it's just to bring people to the feet of Jesus. And you can skimp out on it and that would cause distractions. Like, for example, like dimming or sudden lights. Or you can go way overboard and cause distractions. Like if you have a light show and lights keep flashing in people's face.
Yeah.
Production is the balance of keeping things professional enough to keep it moving, but not so over the top that you now lose people in the process.
Great explanation.
That's a great answer. Yeah.
Yeah. And I really connect too with that. Like, I think people might assume because I have been at so many really huge events, you know, I've worked at professional sporting events. I've worked in TV shows and huge, massive concerts, gigantic, you know, nationwide, world-known festivals, that I would want to go somewhere where worship service looks like that. And in reality, it's actually the opposite. Like, I don't like to see the big giant boom camera come over right in front of the stage as I'm like trying to pay attention and feel connected to what's happening on the stage, you know, and especially in like those type of spaces will usually be a massive arena already. Right. And so you're so far back from something like that to feel connected to the stage and then have this thing waving around in front of you is like, it's so distracting. And really that was one of the things I was wanting to connect with today too, is that like our purpose here is to not be seen. And that's kind of an interesting like thing, is that the best compliment that we can receive is that no one notices us.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But it's also weird because like to feel unnoticed can be challenging, you know, and feel like unloved perhaps, right? And then you hear people complain like, oh, I thought it was too loud. I thought it was too this. I thought this could be better. And you know, it's an interesting dilemma.
Yeah.
It is interesting. I'll let you ask your next question, but like on piggyback of that, overseeing a production team, you'll notice that that's actually one of your biggest struggles is not to like, I've been on both the worship stage and on the sound booth. Worship stage kind of has this added benefit of like people get to see you. And there is a part of us that likes that. And so it's like when you send out a request, everyone confirms right away because they're like, oh, I want to be like, I want to do that. I want to do that. Production booth, it's almost like you're looking for the people who don't want to be seen. But how do you find them? You know, like, like how do you find the people who don't want to be seen? And so it's like the volunteer aspect of finding people who are willing to be in that production booth, to not be seen, but to be a part of it. It's always like a super interesting dilemma because people will come up to you and they'll say, I want to audition for the worship team. But rarely will they come up and say, I want to audition to be your light guy. You know, like,
well, you did a great job of it. One of Nathaniel's first ever, and I'm calling you out now and embarrassing you on a podcast, but you're already on the podcast. So one of your first things was actually building out the stage setup that we have and the LED tape that we have. That's what it's called if you didn't know what those lights were on the side of the screen that twinkle and like move with our backgrounds. And that's how you got involved. And I think you've spent like
several days of hard
several
work.
8-hour days. Just we did a lot of Chipotle
soldering
that week, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
Yeah. Well, it was an interesting time too, because that's actually when I first started getting involved with the production side. I've been going to church here for a while, and I was actually, there was a call, Robert preached a message on service, and there was a call, you know, for people to be involved in the church. And I, you know, filled out the card and checked a bunch of boxes. One of them being production, one of them being security, one of them being, I forget what the other options were. I will say that I did not check the box for KidsMin, but thank you to everyone in KidsMin. I really do appreciate you. Yeah, and so I ended up on the security team, and I was there for quite a while serving. And I think I overheard, or I forget how I came aware of like this idea for the LED strips. And it was right as you were kind of coming on. You were pretty new and, you know, trying to figure out things. And that was an interesting project because I was like, oh yeah, John, I can help you with this. And I think sometimes people come up and say, oh, I can help you with this. And maybe they have a passion for it, but the experience level and professionalism level that you're hoping for isn't maybe what they have, you know? because you want to build something great, and it takes all of us and it takes a team, and it's not to discount their willingness to serve and their willingness to be involved. But, sometimes you're looking for a certain level of something. And so when people come up to volunteer and say, "Oh, I can help you with that," there's a certain skepticism. And, and not having been on the production team at all, not I'm sort of this unknown person, talking with John, and he's like trying to relate to you. I think this guy might be able to help us. I'm not sure. And then having our conversations, I can understand probably where you were at in that mentally, where you're like, I don't know, I think maybe this might work.
Yeah.
But I'm happy with what we built with
Yeah.
that.
Yes.
Yeah. It's awesome. People experience it every Sunday. And just to go back to just the message a little bit, and something that Bobby had talked about, is that worship is both an inward and outward expression. Outward expression of inward work.
Reflection.
That's reflection. Those were the words. Thanks.
See, I tend to know.
Yes, yes, he does. And we've established already in the first, we're 20 minutes in, 20 minutes of our conversation, all of these different elements of production are, in fact, to promote and to push people towards inward reflection, outward expression.
Yes.
And one of our creative ministry goals, I say creative ministry because worship, music, production, video, people taking photos on the weekend, all that falls under this umbrella of creative. And our goal every weekend is to create moments, environments, and opportunities for people to come and to encounter God. And so we've established that, within this conversation already, like the LED tape, the stage design, it's not to look cool. I mean, it does kind of look cool, but like the haze that's up in the air, the moving lights, the sound, the effects that we're able to put on things like reverb and delay and all those kinds of things, they carry an immense purpose. And it really is to create distraction-free environments where things are clean. There's opportunity for people to walk into this place and know that this place has been tailored for them to have an atmosphere to experience and encounter God. So we've established that. I would love to hear, just because we're deep in this conversation now, and I think anyone who's still listening and is wanting to learn more about production and what happens at our church, like I'd love to hear maybe just from your guys' perspectives, as you've been a part of producing worship services, what are some of the biggest challenges that people may not actually know or even think of, but some of the challenges that go into creating these services each week? Last minute changes,
Yeah.
microphones not
crashes.
working, computers crashing. Yeah. Like
Yeah,
what are some of those things?
It's interesting. It's this balance of like science and art that we're doing, right? There's very much a science to everything that we're doing, and science is not very forgiving. If you do science the wrong way, you will experience wrong things. And but there's also an art to it, right? And so the people that we are working with to create, this atmosphere where God can be and be worshipped, they need to understand a little bit. They need to feel the music. They need to feel the art of it. But there also needs to be an understanding of the actual practical application of the science of how to do that. And it's this crazy juggling of all kinds of things happening all at once, that there's no undo button, there's no redo button.
Yes.
It's like whatever is happening is happening.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that like I've seen a lot over the years is people who are maybe new to the industry, haven't done these kind of things before, or just maybe have a different personality, have different reactions to when it doesn't go exactly as planned. And sometimes people have a hard time moving forward as we're moving forward in an unknown direction, right? And so that can really be the difference between being seen or not seen, right? When something changes last minute and it's like, okay, this is not what we planned, or this thing broke, we've got to change. You have to think quickly. You have to make a decision, try and make the best decision and commit to it and not be flustered. And you have to just go with that.
Yep.
A lot of times I feel like a production director on a Sunday morning operates very similarly to a day of wedding coordinator. If you guys have ever seen anybody in that kind of a role. One quick story about my wedding. My best man and his wife, so his wife was our wedding coordinator. Her name's Hannah. His name is Clayton. Lost the ring, like walking. And if he's listening, you know, it's a funny joke because he told me like 4 months later. But that's the point. Lost the ring. They both disappeared for like 45 minutes that day. I don't even remember them disappearing, but they were gone. And sure enough, when we got married, that ring was there. And they kept silent. They didn't tell me anything that day. And like 4 months later, they shared like, hey, you have no idea what actually happened, but your ring was gone. There were all these other situations, like this vendor forgot this thing. This vendor, messed this thing up. In a lot of ways, a production director on a Sunday morning works in that way. Like they are establishing relationship and keeping things smooth between so many different parties. You've got, our executive pastor, Pete, walking up and saying, hey, it's too loud, bring this thing down. Or you've got Mariah walking in saying, hey, the LED wall in the kids' room, one of the panels isn't working. Can you come fix it in the middle of song 2? And then, you've got...
It sounds a little too like on the nose.
Yeah.
It seems like you've
this,
barely
this
saw
thing
it.
happened
Doesn't sound very theoretical.
Yeah.
So you've just got lots of different things that are moving and lots of things that go into the weekend experience. And the person who's attending a service at Rise City has no idea that all these things are happening.
That's our plan.
Yeah.
And that happens in most productions. If you do like theatrical or something that does a repeated production where it's in theory the same show, a bunch of times, it's never the same show.
No.
And the goal is that the audience doesn't know that, right? They see what they see. They see when it
You're
happens.
telling me that
And
Wicked has
there's a
had issues?
million things happening
Never. By
behind the
Hamilton.
scenes, that people have no idea about. Sometimes, middle of a theatrical production, they'll switch the main character in the middle of the show because somebody got sick or they hurt their ankle or something else. And hopefully the audience doesn't even notice. One person goes off and 3 seconds later, another person comes on and
Crazy.
the show must go on.
Yeah.
It's just how it is. And it's an interesting environment if you have no idea it exists.
Yeah.
Fun story. Ben and I could probably do that, and no one would know because yesterday at church, when we're filming this on Monday, someone
happens
came
to
up
you
to
all the
me.
time.
Yeah. And they were just like, hey, I just want to thank you for leading us in worship every week. And I was like, you're welcome.
That happens to Sean and Ben all the time.
Just say thanks.
Yeah, I know. I don't want to make him feel
So we'll
bad.
try that next week. When Ben goes to the side to tune his guitar, you just slip in there.
Right,
and
just-
switch.
Didn't you
Slay
tell me
it.
one time somebody walked up to you and asked how my babies were?
Right. Yeah. Oh,
They're
yeah.
like,
It's
how are the
happened.
kids? You know,
I'm just like, they're doing wonderful. Because
Yeah.
at what point do you go, you're talking to the wrong person? Like, I don't want to embarrass them in the auditorium. So then I
Hopefully
don't
they're not watching.
Yeah.
They'll feel bad.
If they are, then come up to me and say you're that person, and I'll be like, I know you are. I haven't forgotten you. You've just forgotten Ben.
Yeah. Well, we have just a couple minutes left as part of our podcast, and there's maybe just one or two more questions I want to ask. But before we get to any of that, before we start to close out things, I just want to say on behalf of our creative team here, but also on behalf of our listeners, our church, the production team is incredibly important, and there's so much grace that should always be extended regardless. But if you really truly knew the 1,000 paper cuts that these guys take, it's insane. And just a word of thankfulness.
Did you see the
and
one on
gratefulness.
Sunday? It happened on Sunday. Pro Presenter crashed.
It did. It did. I was freaking out. Pro Presenter
But I bet you
crashing is
didn't
scary
notice
for
that,
me
did you?
because then the words don't pop up on the TV. And I don't know the songs. No, I'm just kidding. No, I know the
Is it the
songs
same
pretty
guy?
well.
Yeah, the last song.
Is
right?
Holy Forever.
Oh, Holy Forever.
Yeah.
You got that one.
We could,
That's
yeah.
fine.
We
Yeah.
could make it work.
Same guy would be stressful.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Say
Yeah.
the wrong name.
Yeah.
The wrong God? What?
No, like I'm calling on the God of Josiah. And you're like, oh, I don't know what does Josiah do? Oh no.
Yeah. So hopefully that doesn't keep happening. But so with a couple minutes left, one thing at the beginning of our worship series that I did was email our creative team, just asking, is there any questions that you guys may have that feel like they could be beneficial to the podcast? Are there any topics that you think could be helpful things to bring up? And I'm going to bring up 2 questions to this crew.
Okay.
Because I feel like you guys are the best people to answer this. 1, can production ever become too polished? And how do you avoid letting technology overshadow the message of a Sunday morning, move of the Holy Spirit, what's happening in a room?
I don't know about too polished, but you can definitely try to be too flashy. You know, because what we're doing every week is new and there's stuff always going on. But we're definitely trying not to be too flashy. You know what I mean? Everything we do is very subtle. And it, like Jean said, it's to be distraction free. We're trying to create that atmosphere that is just calming. It really brings you, like, literally, we bring the lights down so you don't see everything around you. Like, you're just feeling like it's you and God. You know, we don't want you to worry about the person two people next to you. That's also why we have the level where it's at, because you want to play that balance of, like, you don't want to feel like people can hear you sing, because people get, anxious about themselves, singing, stuff like that. So our goal is not to be too flashy. You can definitely be too flashy, and I think we've all been to those places, and even those concerts. That's a perfect place to be flashy, But I think church is to be distraction free, not too flashy. I don't know if you can be too polished.
I think it's all in the intention and what the purpose is. And this relates to, like, a lot of the way we live our lives. If the focus is on God, then most likely it will never get to a point where it's too polished and flashy, right? Can it be? Yeah, probably. But you're probably not doing it for the reasons of glorifying God. You're probably doing it because you want to have this cool new toy, or you want to do this thing, or you want something else. We look at the Bible and the prescription and the description of the building of different temples. They are very ornate and extravagant and glorifying to God, but there may be a limit of what should and shouldn't be there. What's the example? The 2 sons, like, puts them in fire in the pan, and then they're done. They go too far, and they're not with the purpose of glorifying God. We need to pay attention to where we're putting that intention.
Yeah. As a team here, I mean, it's not one of us running all of this. So I think we probably all hold each other accountable too.
Yes.
And what we've been able to establish and build here at Rise, I would say we're all probably in agreement. This is the level of production value that we're okay with. There's certain things that we'd like to improve upon, but I don't think any of us are thinking it's too much, too over the top, but it's serving the purpose that we're hoping that it would pretty well.
Yeah, I think it's good to check it too. Make sure that we don't get too comfortable and slowly drift towards that, right?
Yeah.
And make sure that we're still connected with our congregation, and they're still feeling connected to the worship and not to the lights.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, like, we have this ministry time after the message and stuff. And if we had planned for 2 bars of a song and then end exciting, and you get through those 2 bars or whatever, and there's still 10 people getting prayer in the front, And it's like, well, production says that we need to go into this exciting song. It's like, no, that's when you make the call of like, hey, let's actually stay kind of mellow and let's allow these people to have this moment. And then you also balance that tension with, we also have volunteers in other areas who aren't inside on Sunday, who like they said, I will give you this commitment, and we need to honor that. So it's just a constant tension between the two.
I'm going to finish our podcast with one final question. This is actually a different one than what got sent in. This is one that I just started thinking of. All of you have been a part of production teams, worship teams, music teams, things that are in churches. But the unique thing about all of you is that you've actually been in those kinds of environments outside of churches as well. What is happening in the room of a church that's different than what's happening at, say, a huge secular concert at the Rady Shell here in San Diego? Like, does that question make sense?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
how is what we do on a Sunday morning any different, and why does it carry the value that it does?
I mean, the biggest I feel is when everything's really connecting. You really feel the Holy Spirit in that room. You can go to Metallica or whatever, and it's going to be awesome. It's going to sound awesome. But there's just something about the connection with the Holy Spirit. And like, what's awesome is like when we who are focusing on all the production can also get lost in the Holy Spirit. You know, that's when it's just so beautiful. There's something to that, you know.
Yeah, I would agree. The same. I mean, I know we've all been there. You know, you're driving on the road and your mind is somewhere else, and all of a sudden you're like, oh man, my exit's the next exit. How did I go 20 miles already?
Yeah.
And you know, you get in that flow state, and that's not something that probably usually happens to people when you're watching a mainstream band concert, right? Your attention is very focal. It's very forward, and rather than inward. You know, I do find, like, especially for some of the nights where we have extended worship nights and or extended sets, like, I really will feel it, and I am really in it, and I'm the other member on stage, you know, and you get in a flow, and you're like just feeling the music and the worship in you, and that's something you'll never get anywhere else.
Yep.
Yeah, I think also just like lastly, when you go to see someone like Metallica or Coldplay or whatever, like their name is on the marquee, and so they're the kings of the night. What they say goes, what they want goes, and everyone's there for them. When you go to a church, like you have the church's name, but like the king is Jesus. And where churches lose it is when they are so focused on their name. What's their name like in the community? What's their name like there? What's their services like? Are they better than everyone else? But in a healthy church, everyone's goal is to please King Jesus. And so the worship leader doesn't get to have this huge ego because it's not their name. It's the Lord. And the pastor doesn't get to get a huge ego because he's just serving the Lord, as well as the greeter is serving the Lord, as well as the kids ministry person is serving the Lord. And so I think at a concert or a production like that, like Wicked, right? Like you're the king of the night is Wicked, the actors or whatever. At a church, it's not the band, it's not the person speaking. Everyone is looking up to the Lord. And that's what kind of separates it.
Yeah, that's a great word. Well, we will wrap up this podcast here on that question, because I feel like that really answers and sums up not only the role that you guys play, but the direction and the pointing of the congregation's eyes, as John just shared. Like, it really should not actually be towards the stage design, towards the screens. It's all pointing towards Jesus, and that's why we do it. And one more time, I'll just say a ginormous thank you to all of you who have played such instrumental roles in creating all of these moments and environments and opportunities for people to encounter the Lord here at Rise City as part of these services. There's so many stories that as we serve week in and week out, we don't hear all of them, but we actually know that it's happening. And the production teams have played such an instrumental role in the furthering of the gospel and the furthering of the work that the Lord is doing in our church. And so if you're listening to this and you come into church on a Sunday morning, just go say thanks. Like, you have no idea how much these guys have actually ministered to you.
We'll probably give you an
Over the
awkward,
years.
hey.
Yeah. But really, really thankful and grateful for all of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Ben. I mean, we couldn't do it without your leadership, and you know, it really is a team effort, and it's great to be able to be part of the team and to serve together.
Yeah. Appreciate that. All right. Well, we will see you next week on Digging Deeper.
Love you.